welcome to Talking Records with QJ. I'm Quentin Jones with QuentinJonesGuitar.com, and I got a great record to talk about today. But before I do me a favor, please like this video and subscribe. I got some cool content on the way. There's some there. You can see about my horse, Nevi. I have a whole series called The Stable Saints about his rescue. Plus, I have all kinds of music videos and videos live and in the studio of projects I work on. Okay, so today, let's talk about this very special record called Please Please Me by the Beatles. When I was a kid and first came into consciousness, it was to the sound of this album playing on my brother's brown record player in the basement of Bloomingdale Avenue. This album plus some other records were being played all the time, and I knew right away the Beatles were the boss band that I would love forever. And it turned out to be so because I have now been alive officially forever. This is also the album that taught me you can't trust record companies, because this album was released by multiple labels and multiple versions. I first knew it as Introducing the Beatles, which came out on a small label out of Chicago called VJ Records. And VJ, I think they only had the rights to this one album, and when Beatlemania hit, they decided to start stamping out other versions. Mind you, it's the same record on the inside, but they came out with different covers. This one's called Songs, Pictures, and Stories of the Beatles. They also had one that was called The Beatles versus the Four Seasons, where it was the Please Please Me album on one side and a Four Seasons album on the other, and you were supposed to pick who was better. I know the album as well in the States as the early Beatles, but this is a prime example. As where Please Please Me had 13 songs, they cut it down to about 10 songs in here because they thought that was too many songs to include on a record, and they would take these extra songs and stamp out other records and other packaging with all the way up to about Sgt. Pepper. But for our purposes, and for this video, the record I'll be talking about is the European version of Please Please Me. This album came after their third stint in Hamburg, Germany, and most people agree that it was in Hamburg, Germany that the Beatles became a powerhouse band. Prior to going to Hamburg, they were not considered a good band, and they couldn't even get a gig in England, so they went to Hamburg, which was the roughest city, and it was a German audience who didn't understand what they were singing, let alone what they were saying, or their sense of humor. So the Beatles had to really cross that barrier, and they had to rock out like nobody's business. Also, because they played 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week, they would run out of material. There's only so many Chuck Berry songs. See, the bands in London could play an hour and never have to repeat, and they could do all these covers of Chess Records recording artists and Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and all that. But the Beatles had 8 hours to fill, and they would run out of that stuff, so they would have to start going over to country music, or they would have to start playing show tunes, or even old standards that the German crowd could understand the melody, even if they didn't understand the words. Being forced to have such an expansive repertoire of music came in handy when the Beatles started writing their own songs, and that's another reason why they were so advanced compared to other English bands. Other English bands based their originals off of 3-chord blues songs, which are amazing. I have nothing against that. That's fantastic. But the Beatles could go deeper than that because they knew how to play lounge music, or they knew how to play show tunes or what have you, to keep a hostile audience happy for a long period of time. Also in Germany, they developed a really hard style. They started wearing leather jackets, leather pants, greasy hair, long hair, and they were staying up all hours of the day and night, partying, being young men, doing things that young men of the day did. In fact, when Brian Epstein took over management of the Beatles, he changed them and made them look more wholesome. And it's awfully funny that they were truly the bad boys that looked like good boys. But later, the London bands wanted to become the bad boys, to be the anti-Beatles. So all of these rich upper-class boys went out and dressed up like tough guys. And the tough guys, the Beatles, dressed up like the rich upper-class boys. Crazy, huh? Well, whatever. Marketing. Got to sell them records. So after cleaning the image of the Beatles up, their manager, Brian Epstein, took a recording of them around to all the record companies in England and got politely asked to leave. Yes, that's right. There wasn't one record company in England. Sometimes the same record company would reject the band twice. Finally, at a last-ditch effort, he went to a label that was known for comedy and classical, Parlophone Records, where he met George Martin, and George decided to give the band a chance. They recorded 2 singles, Love Me Do, which did okay, and their second one, Please Please Me, rocketed to #1. It was then that George Martin decided that they could spend enough money to actually record an album. So he brought the Beatles in to Abbey Road Studios to allow them to record a whole album, and they gave them 10 hours to do so. That's right, their first album was recorded in 10 hours, and that's why I say it's a great live record, because these songs were recorded as a live band with very little overdubs. You know, they might add in like if Ringo needed to put a bongo part in, they would overdub that, obviously, or a backing or some hand claps. So basically the record is live. And what you have to understand is, back in that day, the technology for live recording was terrible. The Beatles, they didn't have any monitors. They couldn't hear themselves, so they may be singing out of tune, or the guitars could be out of tune. There's not really any good live recordings. So this is a recording of them playing live in a controlled environment. And it shows you that they really were a killer live band and could generate tremendous excitement. Please Please Me kicks off with 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's I Saw Her Standing There, an original song that Paul McCartney wrote that showcases his phenomenal bass playing. In fact, in my humble opinion, I believe that Paul McCartney was the first real rock and roll electric bass player. Because even though the electric bass had been out for a while, it was mainly played as a upright bass kind of turned this way. They took the same approach, and Paul's playing became very melodic, and I Saw Her Standing There is a great preview of that and has a great hook. The second song is called Misery, which is one of the songs they cut off of Please Please Me when they released it as the early Beatles. This song's really dark, really bluesy, and to me, John is haunting in the song. The third song is Anna, Go to Him, which was originally recorded and written by Arthur Alexander, who went on to record and write Burning Love for Elvis Presley. Again, this is a great vocal, and they don't do it like Arthur. They do it like the Beatles, which is a thing you'll find with all their covers on their first early albums, because in their early albums, they recorded both originals and covers. But their covers, they always made their own. The fourth song is called Change, which was done by the girl group The Cookies. And that's another thing the Beatles did. They would take unlikely songs that were written from a different perspective, and they would turn it into their own. Chains is followed by Boys, which was recorded by another girl group called the Shirelles, one of my favorite. In fact, the Beatles did a number of Shirelles songs. However, Ringo, the band's drummer, sings this, and it's great because this song is not a letdown. This song kicks. After that is Ask Me Why, which is a great sample of like a lounge, 60s lounge music. John Lennon does a tremendous vocal again. His vocals on this album are stellar. But it's really cool. There's this really non-rock and roll guitar hook in it, and it just draws you right in. Please Please Me, which was originally written as a slow song. And this is a great example of not giving up and not being afraid to change things around, because it went from a boring song to a #1 hit. And in fact, Please Please Me and Love Me Do were both released as singles, and this is the only time that they actually included the singles on legitimate Beatle albums, not compilations. The second side opens up with Love Me Do. Now, I've heard multiple versions of Love Me Do, and Love Me Do is a great song to put to rest the debate about whether the Beatles should have replaced Pete Best with Ringo Starr on drums. And I can tell you, if you get the anthology and you listen to Love Me Do played by the Beatles with Pete Best, and then you listen to Love Me Do played by the Beatles with Ringo Starr, it's clear-cut who the winner is and that they made the right choice. No disrespect to you, Pete, but that's how I feel. Love Me Do is followed up by P.S. I Love You, another great lounge song. John's rhythm guitar on this song is excellent. George is doing these little hits, but John's driving the song. It's got a great cha-cha-cha to it, and Paul's vocal is simply great. After that, you got another Shirelles song, Baby It's You, my favorite Beatles cover, I think. If not, my favorite, one of the top 2 or 3. John Lennon truly owns this song, as does the whole band. And it's great to hear George Martin play the piano on this, because it was a live recording and they didn't have a lot of overdubbing to do. So George Martin, their producer, played piano on it, which is something he would do. He would play on a lot of Beatle records, being one of the 5th Beatles that's often talked about. After Baby It's You comes Do You Want to Know a Secret? Now, on this album, they have George Harrison singing it, and he does a phenomenal job. But it is not a featured song. However, here's the thing. The Beatles' not featured songs ended up being hits for other people. They gave this song to Billy J. Kramer in the Dakotas, and he had a monster hit with it. The 5th song is A Taste of Honey, which is a classic example of playing a song that people would recognize because it was a big hit. It was a Broadway show tune, and the Beatles would do this a lot. And it was a way of getting the German-speaking audience to have something that they, oh, I've heard that. Second to last song on this side is another really dark song, much like Misery, called There's a Place. And I think these two songs are dark because they're songs that were not on the early Beatles, and that was the album I heard most as a kid. It wasn't until later years that I started buying the European version. So, There's a Place has a really cool harmonica, bluesy riff in it. It's great. But the last song on the album takes the cake. It's called Twist and Shout. And I'll tell you, John Lennon recorded this as the final song, and he did one take of it because he did not think his vocal could handle two. But that one take is enough to make the whole world explode. Most people, if you ask them who did Twist and Shout, they would say the Beatles, not the Isley Brothers, who were the writers and the original guys to record the song. But unlike other bands, the Beatles would take a song and do it their way, from their vision and how they did it, which I think is pure genius. So anyways, I hope you enjoy that. Please give me your feedback. Go listen to this record. Deep listen. Don't do it just in when you're doing the laundry or vacuuming or driving to work. Sit down, put on a real set of headphones, or go and put on our stereo speakers and turn your mind off and just listen to it. And envision yourself walking into a dingy cellar somewhere in Liverpool or possibly in Hamburg and seeing this sweating, ratty old band in the back playing these numbers. And that's what it was for the first people to ever hear the Beatles. That was their experience. Check it out. Leave a comment. Good to see you.